I'm back. This is Daria's Detective Diaries. My name is Daria. If you want to know how to spell my name, my personal email will be in the show notes, so have a look at that. And if you've got any comments or questions, feel free to send me a message. I'm going to be expanding a little bit more on the surveillance that we've been doing, the forensic treatment process, and some interesting conversations that I've had with clients. Last time I mentioned that we might have a new client. That's all confirmed. We've actually done some surveillance for her already. She's a female client. I can't say too much because of confidentiality, but all I can say it's a matrimonial matter. What's different for me with this client is previous surveillances that I've done have been predetermined. We've known a lot of facts already. But in this case, we became sort of the fact finders. The information was very limited, very scarce. And although I've learnt, as I mentioned last time, that planning is crucial, planning for when the initial plan fails is also important. Having a plan B, if you will. An example was being told information for surveillance, vehicles to expect, or timings that turn out to be incorrect. The other day, me and my colleague did surveillance for this new client, and information provided turned out to be incorrect and flew the initial game plan out the window. So quick thinking was required from both me and my colleague in order to get all of the needed details or information to give back to the client, which did lead to me being left a little bit stranded, but it was controlled chaos. Something I've learned is that when the client provides you with some information, they don't necessarily consider what they know or have been told could turn out to be false. I think that clients often don't realize what information to provide because they aren't familiar with the process. And that is where we come in. Actually, clients saying, I don't know, sometimes is better, so we can plan accordingly, so that we can plan for that spontaneity, get there early, keep our eyes peeled, or maybe even increase the number of investigators or vehicles that we have on scene, basically to allow for multiple scenarios. Of course, my colleagues with more experience are aware of this fact and know how to expect it, but for me, that is something to get used to. Earlier last week, I learned more about the process of treating an object for fingerprints. I did mention it last time, as I was the one that was responsible for transporting the letter from London to our Haslemere office. The process included soaking the letter in a very strong smelling solution, which is then left to react overnight, and leaving it in a very hot environment for a prolonged period of time. The treatment used is called an anhydrous, and I'll be lying if I said that I knew what was going on a molecular level, despite asking lots of probably really annoying questions. But I saw the result of the process and it looked like something out of a movie or a true crime show. All marks, fingerprints, and other marks were dyed purple to make them visible to the naked eye. You can hear more about the forensic process on other episodes. When writing up the report, my colleague responsible for fingerprint forensics said that this was one of the most reactive pieces of evidence she has treated. Basically one of the best pieces of evidence that she has treated, which was brilliant as this was my first time. I felt proud and a little relieved that I had not accidentally tampered with the letter during transportation. I've also started answering calls from clients with inquiries. I selfishly asked maybe one too many questions regarding their situation before passing them on to the appropriate specialist in our office, just out of curiosity, honestly. But hearing their situations, empathizing and trying to think of any similar cases that I might have worked on and remembering the approach that we took and what worked and what didn't work, etc. A lot of them have been very interesting to say the least, and hopefully would lead on to some new exciting cases. One specific example, keeping client confidentiality of course, was a client inquiring about potential emails being compromised and possible laptop or mobile phone forensics. While I don't handle this yet, I am interested to learn more about the process involved. During more routine responsibilities with our fingerprinting clients, I have met some really fascinating individuals. I met a fashion designer, got her Instagram. I met a pediatric surgeon. I've met lots of teachers who have taught abroad in really interesting countries. I've met a Red Cross volunteer. I've even met a travel influencer, which I'd not heard of before, but now I know them. I've spoken to a man whilst taking his fingerprints who was genuinely convinced that his next door neighbour murdered her husband and since fled the country. He was telling me lots of the reasons behind this opinion of his and what he has tried to do about it. It was very fascinating to hear about and ask questions about. Earlier this month, when I was in Hungary, I'd met quite a wealthy businessman at the Formula One who was telling me about his experience with PIs, where he was actually the subject of an investigation. It's just another demonstration that our work isn't just UK-based, but global. And this includes companies and people and entrepreneurs and whatnot. Next week, I'm actually flying solo for surveillance. It's about time, but I am a bit scared. Also next week, we're doing some surveillance involving corporate drinks. So there's a lot of varying factors, lots and lots of people in one space, probably a bit of that spontaneity, planning for spontaneity that I mentioned earlier. I'm also going to be learning more about the process of ninhydrin treatment. And hopefully we'll have more to say about the process on a molecular level next time. Make sure to listen to my next episode. I'm probably going to be talking about a lot more than what I've just mentioned. And that's all from me this time around. Listen to the next episode in just a few weeks' time on Daria's Detective Diaries, which is probably the only podcast series with insights from a detective placement student. And do send me any questions or comments to my work email.